Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bhartiya, and welcome to another episode of TFiR Let's Talk. We are here at KubeCon in Detroit, and today we have with us Arul Jegadish, co-founder of OpsVerse. Arul, it's first of all great to see you.
Great. Thanks for having me here. Nice to talk to you, Swapnil.
Yeah, first of all, tell us a bit about the company because you're a co-founder. So, what led you to creation of this company?
Yeah, so I come from a DevOps and developer tools background. I have experience building the entire DevOps toolchain from scratch at multiple companies. During my experience and my co-founder's experience, we have basically built the same set of tools over and over again at multiple places. And that was when we realized the various challenges involved in building a DevOps toolchain. And we want to solve it for the entire industry, and we started OpsVerse.
I also want to talk about the term DevOps itself. Okay, we heard about DevOps, developer, DevOps, SREs, and now we are talking about platform engineers. If you can talk a bit about, of course, from the company's perspective, but we are looking at some very basic and important problem to solve. So if we just remove that label, whether it's DevOps or SREs or platform engineering, what is that problem that we are trying to solve? And then we'll talk about what is OpsVerse doing there.
If you look at any software organization, you have this software delivery pipeline. Compare this to a factory where you have this assembly line. So it's really about you have to write your code, test it, build it, test it, deploy it so your customers can use it, you monitor it, you manage it. So it's very similar to the assembly line. Now there are a lot of tools involved and a lot of different personas involved in getting this software from a developer's laptop to production. So in the past, developers did their job, and then there were other teams that took over the code and operated it in production. That was not optimal. There were a lot of inefficiencies in that. When the whole DevOps methodology came in, the developers were given the ability to see what is happening in production and control what is happening in production. That's really about DevOps. It's not even about the ownership or how you name the teams, etc. It's really about giving developers now the ability to control and see what is happening in production. So I can take an example here. Back in the Java days, like 2007, let's say even before AWS, if you are a Java developer and if you want to upgrade to a new version of Java, that's a multi-week effort within an organization to coordinate all of that. Now enter Docker and containers. A developer can just do it himself, test it, and ensure everything's clean, and test it on his laptop just as it is going to be in production. So that's what DevOps has enabled the industry to do. Now, recently there has been this platform engineering movement. That's been happening in the industry. It's just a new term that we are giving to what the industry has been doing. It's really about looking at all these tools and giving your developers a platform so that they can just worry about writing code. They don't have to worry about all the tools.
That's what I wanted to hear, because we do hear these terms, but we get so lost in those terms that we forget the actual problem they were trying to solve. So now just let's go back to the explanation that you gave there. Now let's talk about the importance of building this DevOps strategy so that we can fulfill those requirements, for the developer and DevOps teams.
Yeah. So for any organization, as they embark on adopting the DevOps methodologies, one thing to realize is there are going to be multiple tools involved. There's never going to be just one tool that is going to solve your entire pipeline. There's going to be multiple tools involved. So it's important to understand that. And these tools are going to come from different vendors. Some of them are going to be commercial, some of them are going to be OSS. So it's first thing to understand is there's going to be multiple tools. Now, for your end users within the organization, these are the developers, SREs, DevOps engineers. Think about bringing all these together into a standard interface so that it's easy for them to work through this pipeline. So those are the two things that I would call out. There's going to be multiple tools, embrace that, work on bringing a standard interface, one interface for for your developers and SREs and different personas within the organization.
You're absolutely right. Folks will have to choose multiple open source tools. The way I look at open source, and I may be wrong, you can correct me, is that open source is great for collaboration. It's a very good collaboration model, right? It's not a business model. Once again, we can agree to disagree or argue about that, but it also solves day one problem. Day two challenges are where either the commercial players come into their vendors come into play, because that's where the challenges start. Not only to put those together, but just to maintain those tools as well. So talk a bit about, first of all, there are so many tools in the cloud native world already. Yeah. We are not looking at a simple lamp stack anymore. So talk a bit about the complexity. It's not just there are multiple tools, there are multiple. It's not even, yes, yeah. So it's overwhelming. So talk about the challenges that are there. And once again, when you say that to build a DevOps strategy, how companies can look at this complexity. You can look at big companies who have all the resources, but the adoption of cloud native is also with companies who are new, very small. They do want an online presence there. So it becomes things very, very difficult.
Definitely, I think as you stated, if you look at the CNCF landscape itself, there are like 500 plus different tools. And if you look at like the cloud providers who offer different managed services, there's another 300. So there are plenty of choices, tool choices. So it's very important for an organization to pick the right set of tools and also think about the day two operations problem. And open source is definitely winning. Like an open source tool usually has the right set of features, right set of integrations. The community will develop the right features. It's not one vendor's opinion. The community will build the right features. So it's really the day two operations and integrations that comes into the picture. So that's where we now have companies like OpsVerse solving that gap, where OpsVerse actually operationalizes open source tools and brings them out in a easy to use manner for our customers, where all the day two operations are like taken care of. So in the coming years, you will definitely see more and more companies like solving for the day two operations of open source tools.
Let's talk about what is OpsVerse doing to solve some of those problems.
Yeah, so OpsVerse offers a DevOps tools platform where we bring common DevOps tools, mainly CNCF projects and open source projects. We operationalize it and bring it out as a service. So organizations that use OpsVerse can go to OpsVerse console, click and get these tools up and running. And the platform takes care of managing the tools end to end. And recently in KubeCon, we made an announcement about an IDP layer, which is built on top of the CNCF Backstage.io project, which actually brings together all these tools into one interface. And customers can bring the rest of their tools also into the interface through plugins. This will enable platform engineers to build their internal dev platform. Basically, we enable them to easily build an internal dev platform.
Of course, the complexity is there. A lot of players, they're trying to simplify it, but then some of those solutions becomes too opinionated as well, where even if you are using some of these cloud-native technologies, you're not getting the flexibility that they are meant to bring. So talk about the challenges or the problems that comes with such, you can also call them SaaS offerings, where you're using a vendor-specific product. So you are actually losing on both ends.
Yeah, so what happens is we see a lot of vendors, in order to simplify, in trying to simplify, they abstract away the underlying tools. What happens is it doesn't scale beyond a point. Beyond a point, your abstraction layer becomes your bottleneck. So we see that happening with a lot of organizations, a lot of vendors. So it's important to pick, when you look for vendors, it's important to pick a vendor who gives you the flexibility to go down the abstraction layer and make changes when you get to that point. When your requirements go beyond a certain scale, you should be able to go down the layer and and work with the tools directly.
So you have a presence here at KubeCon. I'm pretty sure a lot of folks walk to you, talk about the problem that they are facing. So can you also talk, about whether through the attendees here or, your customer user base, where, you do feel that they are facing some challenges when they do interact and deal with a lot of these SaaS providers?
Yeah. So a lot of conversations we had. People were interested to know more about how we bring out this tools platform. If you look at SaaS tools vendors, you have to send your DevOps data to somebody's cloud, to the vendor's cloud. And if you look at DevOps tools, that's not very optimal in many cases. These DevOps tools need to work with your source code, which is the most sensitive information within an engineering organization. Often it has to interact with your production systems, like deployment tools, incident management tools, and it's not a good security posture to open up your production system to a third-party vendor's cloud. So the way we solve that with OpsVerse, we are pioneering a model called private SaaS, where it's like SaaS, but all these tools are orchestrated within the customer's VPC. So the customer doesn't have to open up their network or their production system to our systems. They don't have to open up access to their source code. Everything stays within their network. For example, log, where there could be sensitive information, they don't have to ship it outside their network. One example is Argo CD as a service is one of the tools in our tools platform. And Argo CD is a system that is used for continuous deployment, and Argo CD needs access to your production system. With the private SaaS model, there's no security issues because the Argo CD is orchestrated within the customer's network, so you don't have to open up access to a third-party network. That's an example, and you don't have to ship your log files outside your network, which means you have a better compliance and audit posture. So that's a new way of deploying DevOps tools. We call it as private SaaS. This is something OpsVerse is pioneering, the deployment model.
Arul, thank you so much for taking time out today and to talk about OpsVerse and also talk about the larger problem and the solution that you folks are working on through the open source solutions. And I would love to talk to you again. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. Thank you.